So this is on our traditional territory called Anglais. This is Ganassadage, part of the Haudenosaunee lands that is being developed by Parc, TransCanada, and Gazoduc. And we're here to state our opposition to the kind of development that it continues without our free, prior, and informed consent. So we have some things to read if there's going to be questions. Can you please hold them till after everybody speaks? Yokoa, and so I want to introduce a community member, Juanito William Garro.
Okay. Last week it was discovered that TransCanada and Gazoduc illegally installed new pipelines in Anglais, known by its colonial name of Parc National d'Oka, Oka National Park. This was done without the free, prior, and informed consent of the Minyangahaga of Ganassadage. The administration of Oka Park would have the public believe that the only new activity is repaving the existing bike path, that no new gas pipelines have been installed. But this suppression of truth, mere fabrication of lies and deceptions told by government and their institutions, is the deflection of the truth to camouflage their guilt of land dispossession and oppression, to convince their constituents that the fraud they commit is legal or just. These myths have never ceased to be perpetuated upon the unceded indigenous lands, upon the racist doctrine of discovery. What we are witnessing yet again today is a system of capitalism supported by governments, the unfettered free market economy that is characteristic of the colonial and empire building agenda causing land dispossession. Violations of Indigenous peoples' rights have continued since before the birth of Canada in a most violent manner, often with traumatic and deadly consequences for the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. Because there is no fair and just recourse for Indigenous peoples, as colonial laws forced us to be morally and legally obligated according to our original ancestral laws to conduct protests and erect barricades. To enter into colonial courts is counterintuitive to a just resolution to land dispossession, as third parties continue to develop our lands regardless of negotiations or court actions.
Promoting unstable resource energy like gas pipelines lacks a vision for equality of life for future generations of human, aquatic, and wildlife, as the health and well-being of the land is threatened. No amount of mitigation will restore the environment upon which we as Indigenous people, indeed all life, rely upon. Generations of Minyangahaga have picked medicines and fruits here in Ganassadage. They lived here, created here, conducted council meetings here, and took care of the land. Today we are denied this freedom, as to enter this park we must provide the colonial Indian status card to prove we are from the Ganassadage, our precious homeland of our ancestors, taken from us for the playground of the public and for resource development. This most recent attack upon the integrity of our traditional homelands in Ganassadage exemplifies the lack of good faith, goodwill by Canada and Quebec. Throughout this past summer, we have tried different ways of communicating with Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Bennett, and Minister Kelly of Quebec, only to be excluded from any decision-making process, ignored or misinformed by the malevolent bureaucrats of the lack of power this government has to stop development and land fraud. The silence and denials of governments assumes fiduciary obligations to intervene is a disturbing signifier that Canada intends to continue business as usual as it has done so for the past 150 years of genocide and dispossession. There is no reconciliation towards the Kanyakahage of Kanisadage in the matter that could have been resolved 27 years ago and can still be resolved using the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People as the framework for reconciliation and restitution. But reconciliation must include reparations and respect for all Indigenous peoples' human rights. Thank you, Bona.
This past summer, indeed since the 1990 crisis, the Kanyakahage of Kanisadage have endured concerted efforts by government institutions like the municipality of Oka and certain members of the Mohawk Council of Kanisadage, who publicly villainize, ostracize Indigenous land defenders without evidence to support their lives. Indigenous peoples in Kanisadage, like many other Indigenous communities, have suffered under colonial policies and laws intended to demoralize and coerce Indigenous communities to support their agenda of land fraud and dispossession. Indigenous land defenders under our Constitution of Kanyaragawa are within our rights to halt illegal development, to protest against government-created land fraud. We, the Kanyakahage of Kanisadage, are searching for peace, a better life for the youth to learn their culture, their languages, their ancient languages, and practice their customs and traditions through the freedom to use of our lands and resources, including unrestricted access to our homelands, such as Kanisadage, to carry out our traditional activities. We want peace, but Canada and Quebec do not seem to be interested. We, the land defenders of Kanisadage, are aware of the threat to our Mother Earth because of the greed under unfettered capitalistic madness. For generations, the women of our nations have spoken out against the Crown's lack of respect towards us. The disrespect shown to the women of the Otsinyohasaga by Canada in refusing to act and intervene is the personification of the Crown's actual contempt and indifference to the harmful impacts of their colonial laws. We must remind Canada and Quebec of their obligations under the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, which they ignore when it comes to the rights of Indigenous women. But since Canada criminalized the Iroquois Confederacy in 1922, the roles and authorities of Ungwahua women have been trampled on, ignored, and disregarded. One of the legal obligations of states in regard to CEDAW is to ensure elimination of all acts of discrimination against women by persons, organizations, or enterprises. Canada and Quebec have consistently refused to intervene in the land fraud that has occurred in Kanisadage during and before its 150 years of existence. These two major Crown actors arbitrarily interpret the rule of law and violate the values and human rights standards they profess to defend and practice.
Canada must uphold its international human rights obligations and respect the roles and authority of Indigenous women, especially the Haudenosaunee women, which their colonial laws attacked and targeted when they created the Indian Act. Canada and Quebec must implement equality in all levels of its relationship with Indigenous peoples, and incorporate the principle of equality of men and women in their legal system, abolish all discriminatory laws and adopt appropriate ones prohibiting discrimination against women. Canada has pledged many things since the new government was formed 2 years ago. This development and lack of commitment to action by Canada to intervene in this land dispute, despite efforts by community members, including the Longhouse of Kanisadage, to resolve this issue peacefully, remains unacceptable. We therefore demand the following from Canada and Quebec, who have ignored the voices of the women and the Rudinuseshage, the people of the Longhouse, for many generations. And in particular, over the past 2 months, they have done nothing, absolutely nothing, to correct the land fraud that they committed. We'd like an immediate moratorium to be implemented to stop any and all forms of development in traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka of Kanesatake. That Canada begin discussions with the Rudinuses'haga of Kanesatake, the Longhouse people of Kanesatake, to resolve long-standing historical land disputes. That Canada revoke the doctrine of discovery upon which it bases its sovereignty and justification of land dispossession. And that Gregoire Golin, the supposed owner of these lands and owner of Kolindoka, along with the municipality of Oka, cease and desist from selling any lands, any further lands in Kanesatake, and refund the people who have bought disputed land at the illegal development site. That TransCanada and Gazoduc remove their newly installed pipelines from Kahnetake in Oka Park and compensate the Kanien'kehá:ka of Kanesatake through a trust fund of our creation. And this trust fund will support the rebuilding of the traditional institutions that were targeted by Canada, including the traditional governments of the Rudinuses'haga, our culture, and our Kanien'keha language. That any development to take place on our traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka of Kanesatake uphold international human rights standards, in particular the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and its principle of free, prior, and informed consent. That the municipality of Oka respect the Kanien'kehá:ka of Kanesatake's right to self-determination, to protect our lands, and remove the cement blocks from the illegal development site that they installed this week in order to allow free access to the Kanien'kehá:ka people to our traditional lands. We have been trying for generations to resolve this dispute. Canada has told legal fictions and lies about the history of this area. This has and always will be Kanien'kehá:ka lands. We were not brought here by the Sulpicians. This community existed long before Europeans arrived, long before the Sulpician priests, who are the culprits of this land fraud, long before they came. The Sulpician, the seminary of Saint Sulpice in Montreal and in Paris, have created this friction, this conflict, this land dispute, based on the doctrine of discovery. We demand now that Canada answer us, that Quebec answer us, and that they stop any forms of resource development in our traditional territory. People have talked that we should be part of and partners in any kind of resource development and ownership of it, but that's short-sighted, as we said. We must be protecting the lands for future generations. This kind of unsustainable development is killing the planet. It's the reason why the weather has changed from yesterday at 31 degrees to today's 15 degrees. It is that kind of irresponsible judgment by the government of Canada and Quebec that has caused us to have suffered for so many generations of oppression and genocide. We demand that Prime Minister Trudeau step in on this serious matter that is taking place in Kanesatake and on all Indigenous people's lands. We want peace. And for those who think that we are here just because our mere presence implies violence, then you are perpetuating a stereotype that came from the 1990 crisis. We have always wanted peace. We do not want any violence. We do not want to kick anybody out of their home. We are here to resolve this issue in a peaceful manner, but the government refuses, the governments of Quebec and Canada. So we urge all Canadians to put pressure on their government to resolve this issue. And anybody who respects the rights of Indigenous peoples to support our petition online so that we can have discussions, peaceful discussions, in an atmosphere of peace and calm, and not the kind of atmosphere of fear-mongering that was created by the Mayor of Oka, Pascal Couvillon, and the band councillor, Serge Simon. We have always been here in a peaceful way, and we hope that this will continue. We need to protect this land for our people. And we are here today to say we oppose the newly installed gas pipelines by TransCanada and Gazoduc. Those are newly installed. And we thank you all for coming here and for listening to us. Peace can only happen if all sides want it to happen. So, citizens of Oka, we are here for peace. Citizens of Canada and Quebec, we are also here for peace. Please listen to us. We don't know how many times we continue to send this message out to you. Please take our hands and join us in this resolution of this long-standing historical land dispute and land fraud committed by your governments. Yaukoa, Tanikawanaka.